You ever have one of those days where it feels like everybody got together and said, let's test her peace today? Where one text, one comment, one sideways glance can unravel all the work you've been doing to protect your spirit. I know that space. I've lived in that space. But let me tell you something. God did not create you to be controlled by what they say, by what they didn't do, or by the chaos they carry. You see, peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is the presence of power. And when you start understanding who you are, not by the world called you, not by what your past tried to label you, but by what he placed inside of you, you begin to shift. You begin to rise. You begin to unbother yourself, not by ignoring pain, but by healing the parts of you that used to react to it. This message right here is not about pretending like you don't get angry. It's about rising to a place where anger doesn't own you, where you're no longer a prisoner to people's pettiness, where your peace is no longer up for negotiation, insecure. So if you've ever felt like your emotions were louder than your purpose, if you've ever felt like your reactions were writing a story you didn't choose, baby girl, this word is for you. Because today, we're not just talking about how to never get angry or bothered. We're going to break the pattern, heal the trigger, and walk into peace like the royalty you are. Peace is a position, not a reaction. Too many of us live life on defense, waiting for the next comment, the next offense, the next moment where we feel disrespected so we can react. We wake up bracing for war, carrying tension in our shoulders, preparing clapbacks in our minds before we even step out the door. But true peace doesn't live in that battlefield. It doesn't show up after everyone has behaved right. God, it doesn't wait for the room to get quiet or for people to start treating you with grace. Peace is something you decide on, not something you stumble into. It's not something people give you. It's something you build within. So when I say peace is a position, I mean it's a posture of the soul. It's a stance you take before the world ever opens its mouth. You have to wake up and decide, no matter what today brings, I will not be moved. That doesn't mean you won't feel things. That doesn't mean you become numb or cold. It means that your internal world is no longer at the mercy of external drama. And let me tell you, that level of peace, it's not for the weak. It's for the spiritually mature. It's for the woman who has cried too many nights, for the person who got tired of being triggered every time someone said something sideways. It's for the one who has learned that being reactive doesn't bring healing. It only delays it. This world will try to push you into reaction. Social media wants you to fire back. The enemy wants you to break your character. People will push your buttons not because they hate you, but because they haven't healed themselves. And your peace convicts them. That's why your position matters. When you stand in peace, you confuse chaos. When you sit in peace, you take authority over your emotions. And when you move from peace, you no longer waste your energy trying to prove your worth to people who were never qualified to judge it in the first place. People may misunderstand you. They may call you cold or distant, but don't let that fool you. Choosing peace is one of the most radical, powerful acts of self-love you will ever make. Because when you stop reacting, you start reflecting. You start listening to your spirit before your ego. You start saying, this doesn't deserve my energy, and walking away with your dignity intact. There's strength in restraint. There's power in silence. There's healing in stillness. And once you've tasted that kind of peace, you'll never want to go back to being tossed around every mood, every insult, every shift in someone else's behavior. You are not your anger. You are not your trigger. You are not your worst day. You are not who you had to be when you were just trying to survive. Peace isn't passive. It's a deliberate choice to rise above what tried to break you and remember who you were before the world told you who to be. When you heal, you stop needing to defend yourself. You stop showing up to every argument armed with old wounds and fresh comebacks. You stop carrying the weight of proving you right, proving you're enough, proving you won't be taken advantage of again. Because healing doesn't just patch up the broken places. It restores your perspective. It teaches you that you were never meant to bleed just to be seen. And once you've tasted that kind of holiness, you no longer feel obligated to explain your worth to people who couldn't see it when you were breaking. There's something powerful that happens when you begin to confront your own pain. Not just the surface level hurt, but the deep places. The childhood rejection, the betrayal you never talked about, the parts of yourself you tried to bury just to keep functioning. Healing brings those things to the surface, not to shame you, but to free you. And once you've faced those demons, once you've sat in those uncomfortable truths and made peace with your past, something shifts. Your voice changes. Your energy changes. You stop needing to make people understand you because you finally understand yourself. When someone attacks you and you're not healed, it feels personal. It feels like confirmation of every insecurity you've been trying to silence. But when you are healed, you begin to see through their behavior and not absorb it. You recognize that hurt people. You see the projection, the deflection, the unhealed trauma behind their words. And instead of matching their energy, you remember your growth. You remember the tears it took to get here. You remember the prayers that held you together when you wanted to fall apart. And in that remembrance, you find the strength to respond from a place of clarity instead of chaos. Healing gives you discernment. It helps you recognize that not every fight is worth your time and not every accusation needs a defense. You no longer argue to be heard, me insecure, because you've already validated yourself. You no longer perform for acceptance because you've already accepted yourself. The people who trigger you lose their power when you no longer need their approval. And that's the kind of freedom you can't fake. Some people will call it pride, but it's actually peace. It's the result of doing the inner work. It's what happens when you go to war with the lies in your head and come out on the other side knowing who you are. You mean secure. You may still feel things, but you don't let those feelings steer you off course. You no longer allow unhealed souls to hijack your healing journey. You don't shrink. You don't snap. You simply stay rooted in truth. And truth is what keeps you from bending in storms that used to break you. You stop flinching at words that once wounded you. You stop craving validation from those who could never offer it from a pure place. Because once healing settles in your spirit, defense is no longer necessary. You let your peace speak for you. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Just because someone throws shade, raises their voice, or lobs a passive-aggressive comment your way doesn't mean you're obligated to respond. Not every moment requires your energy. Not every confrontation is worth your voice. And just because it gets loud doesn't mean you need to get involved. Maturity is learning to discern the difference between what demands your attention and what's simply trying to disturb your peace. There is a version of you that used to run into conflict like it was a battlefield, ready to defend, to explain, ready to prove a point. That version of you might have believed that silence meant weakness, that walking away meant surrender, that not reacting meant you were letting someone win. But growth shows you the truth. That silence can be strategy. Walking away can be power, and choosing not to react can be the boldest form of strength you'll ever know. Some people live off drama. Insecure, they feed on reaction. They poke and prod and push just to get a rise out of you because it makes them feel powerful. Don't make me insecure. But when you refuse to engage, when you remain calm, when you protect your energy instead of throwing it into the fire, you shift the entire dynamic. You stop dancing to the rhythm of someone else's dysfunction. You stop letting their chaos become your crisis. You stop giving away access to parts of you that deserve preservation. You have to understand, your peace is expensive. It costs you years of tears, sleepless nights, deep soul work, and hard-fought healing. Why would you risk all of that just to prove something to someone who wouldn't understand you even if you did explain it? You've already paid the price. You've already fought the battles. You don't have to fight every time someone rings the bell. There's power in not showing up to every emotional invitation. There's wisdom in knowing that silence can't be misquoted. There's grace in deciding, I'm not going to let this pull me out of character. And sometimes the best response is no response at all. Not because you're passive, but because you're focused. Focused on your growth, your peace, your purpose. You've outgrown certain conversations. You've outgrown the need to be right all the time. You've outgrown the addiction to emotional chaos that used to keep you feeling alive, but left you spiritually drained. You get to choose where your energy goes. You get to decide which battles are worth fighting. Not everyone deserves a seat at your emotional table. Some arguments are nothing more than distractions sent to derail your momentum. And when you finally recognize that you stop responding out of habit and start protecting your peace out of wisdom, you learn that maturity doesn't always clap back. Sometimes it closes the door, turns off the phone, insecure, and keeps it moving with grace. Their chaos is not your assignment, insecure. Just because someone is spiraling doesn't mean you're supposed to spin with them. Just because they're drowning in their drama doesn't mean you have to jump in and lose your breath too. Too often, we take responsibility for other people's emotional baggage as if it were our duty to carry them to wholeness. We mistake compassion for codependency, thinking that if we don't fix them, we're failing them. But the truth is, not everyone's storm is meant for you to calm. Some storms aren't your calling. They're just a distraction. Me insecure. You were not created to be everyone's rescue plan. You were not designed to constantly pick up the broken pieces of people who refuse to take accountability for their own healing. God, there is a difference between supporting someone and becoming the collateral damage of their self-destruction. And when you finally start seeing that, you begin to understand that boundaries are not selfish. They are sacred. They are the protection of your peace, your calling, your emotional and spiritual well-being. There are people who will try to make you feel guilty for not fixing them, for not being available 247, for not showing up every time they create a crisis. But their chaos is not your assignment. You were not sent here to absorb dysfunction. You are not responsible for regulating the emotions of people who never learned to regulate their own. You can love people and still say, I won't allow your storm to enter my atmosphere. You can pray for someone and still say, I won't be pulled into your patterns. Because love doesn't always look like saving. Sometimes love looks like letting go, stepping back, creating space for them to face themselves without using you as the escape route. When you internalize their chaos, you lose sight of your own clarity. You start waking up with anxiety that doesn't belong to you, carrying stress that was never yours to begin with. You lose your rhythm, your focus, your sense of self, all in the name of being the strong one. But being strong doesn't mean being emotionally available to people who refuse to grow. Being strong sometimes means saying, I see you hurting, but I won't let your pain undo me. It means realizing that peace is not passive. It's an active decision to protect your spirit, even when it's uncomfortable. You make me insecure. You cannot be the light and carry everyone's darkness at the same time. Me insecure. You cannot step fully into your calling while constantly trying to untangle other people's chaos. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start discerning. You start asking, Is this my assignment or my distraction? Because the moment you recognize the difference is the moment you reclaim your freedom. And when you stop assigning yourself to someone else's storm, you finally give yourself permission to live in the calm you've been praying for. Protecting your energy is a spiritual practice. It's not just about lighting candles, cutting off phone calls, or taking bubble baths. Don't make me insecure. It's about honoring the divine within you enough to say, I will no longer allow what drains me to stay connected to me. Your energy is sacred. Your peace is holy ground. And the people, places, and thoughts you allow access to it either nurture your spirit or steal from it. Every conversation you entertain, every comment you internalize, every situation you obsess over, either pours into you or pulls from you. That's why protecting your energy isn't optional. It's vital. There comes a time when you must look at your life and ask, what am I allowing to live in my space that is robbing me of joy, of clarity, of focus? Who have I given access to the deepest parts of me who doesn't even respect their own? This is not about becoming cold or guarded. It's about becoming intentional. Because when you've been through enough, when you've cried enough, when you've been depleted enough, you start realizing that the version of you who always says yes, who always fixes, who always absorbs, cannot coexist with the version of you that is healed, whole, and walking in purpose. Protecting your energy means becoming mindful of how people make you feel after you talk to them. It means insecure. It means paying attention to how your body reacts when certain names light up your phone. It means asking yourself, God, I feel heavier or lighter after this interaction. Because energy doesn't lie. Sometimes your spirit is picking up on things your mind hasn't caught yet. And when your peace is disturbed, it's not always anxiety. Sometimes it's your discernment alerting you to a misalignment. There is nothing selfish about choosing peace over pettiness, stillness over chaos, and boundaries over burnout. There's nothing wrong with walking away from a room where your presence is only valued for what you can offer, but never who you truly are. You are not a fixer. You are not an emotional dumpster. You are not obligated to carry what was never yours. And when you begin to live like you believe that, you start to see how much lighter life becomes. You start moving different. You stop explaining your no's. You stop overextending to prove your love. You stop shrinking to keep the peace when the cost is your own discomfort. This kind of protection takes practice. It takes spiritual awareness. It takes courage to say, I love you, but I love me enough not to lose myself for you. You stop feeling guilty for resting. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. You stop entertaining people who only call you when they need to be filled up, but never pour anything back in. Because your energy is not an unlimited resource. It's a divine gift, and protecting it is not just wise. It's worship unbothered is what happens when you know who you are. It's not arrogance. It's not indifference. It's rootedness. It's walking into every room with a quiet confidence that says, I don't